Some people leave a strong impression on others, but still struggle to become truly close to anyone. You may know this pattern. A conversation becomes deep very quickly. Someone tells you they feel understood around you. They like the way you think, the attention you give them, or how openly you talk about things most people avoid. For a while, the connection feels special. Then, something changes. Their messages become less frequent. The conversations become safer and more distant. Someone who once wanted to know everything about you starts pulling away, and you are left wondering what happened. Maybe you tell yourself you were too intense. Maybe you think they only wanted a shallow connection. Or maybe you reach for a more comforting explanation. They were attracted to your depth, but they could not handle what it brought up inside them. Sometimes that may be partly true. People do place their own feelings, fears, and wishes onto others. Someone may admire your courage because they have never allowed themselves to be brave. They may resent your freedom because they feel trapped. They may pull away when a conversation touches something they are not ready to face, but that explanation can become too easy. Because there is another possibility. The qualities that make someone memorable are not always the qualities that make them easy to know. Intensity can create fascination without creating safety. You can make another person feel deeply seen while still keeping your own needs hidden. You can talk openly about pain, relationships, meaning, and human behavior while never saying the simpler things that real closeness needs. I feel unsure. I need reassurance. I do not know what to do. I want you to stay. It would hurt if you left. A person can reveal a lot and still remain hidden. Others may remember the way you made them feel, the questions you asked, or the energy you brought into the room. But after the first strong impression fades, they may realize they still do not know how to reach you. This creates a particular kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being invisible, the loneliness of being noticed, but not truly known. Jungian psychology gives us one way to understand this through the idea of the shadow. The shadow is made up of the parts of ourselves we do not accept, do not recognize, or try to keep outside the person we believe we are. But the shadow is not only what other people place onto us, it also includes what we hide behind the identity we have built. A person who sees themselves as very independent may hide how much they want closeness. A person who is proud of understanding others may avoid asking a simple, direct question. A person who believes they are always misunderstood may never ask how difficult they are to approach. This is the deeper problem. You may not be alone because you are too deep for other people. You may be alone because being memorable has become safer than being known. And that changes the question. The question is no longer only, why do people pull away from me? It becomes, what do I allow people to feel around me, and what do I stop them from reaching? Projection begins when something inside us becomes easier to notice in another person than in ourselves. A quality we reject does not simply disappear. It stays active, but we begin seeing it as though it belongs only to someone else. We may admire someone for a freedom we have never allowed ourselves. We may resent their confidence because it reminds us of our own fear. We may feel threatened by their honesty because it brings us too close to emotions we have spent years avoiding. This is one reason certain people create such strong reactions. A memorable person can become like a screen. Other people place their own hopes, fears, and unlived wishes onto them. Someone may decide that you are extremely courageous because they are only beginning to face their own fear. Another person may see your independence as arrogance because they have spent their life trying to please everyone. Someone may admire your intensity at first, then pull away when being around you brings up feelings they do not understand. The person they approached may never have been entirely you. Part of what they were approaching was an image created from their own hopes. This can explain why admiration changes so quickly. At first, they may tell you that you are different. They may say, no one has ever understood them like you do. They may treat the connection as something rare and almost perfect. But this kind of admiration can create distance while looking like closeness. They are not fully meeting you yet. They are meeting the person they imagine you to be. Sooner or later, real life enters. You disappoint the image. You need something. You become tired. You misunderstand them. You contradict yourself. You are no longer endlessly calm, wise, strong, or mysterious. An ordinary human being appears where they expected someone extraordinary, and they may feel confused or even betrayed, although you never promised to be the person they created in their mind. But projection does not move in only one direction. You may also place an image onto them. Maybe you decide they are shallow because they do not want every conversation to become deep. Maybe their need for space becomes proof that they are afraid of honesty. Maybe their confusion becomes evidence that they do not understand you. Maybe their withdrawal confirms a story you already believe. No one is capable of meeting me at my level. Sometimes that story may contain truth, but sometimes it protects you from a more ordinary and painful question. What was it actually like to be close to me? Did the other person feel understood, or did they feel constantly analyzed? Did they feel invited into your life, or watched from a distance? Could they disagree with you without being treated as unaware or emotionally blocked? Could they ask for something simple without the conversation becoming a lesson about their psychology? Did you allow them to see your uncertainty? Or did they only meet the calm, insightful, and self-contained version of you? Projection becomes especially powerful when both people keep it alive. One person wants to believe they have met someone extraordinary. The other begins acting like the extraordinary person they are expected to be. They become the wise one, the strong one, the person who sees what everyone else misses. For a while, this can feel like intimacy. One person feels understood by someone special. The other feels valued for a role they know how to play. But neither person is fully present. The relationship depends on the image staying alive. Then ordinary life appears. There is boredom. There are misunderstandings. There are different needs. There are limits. One person becomes disappointed. The other feels unseen. Both may say, "You changed." But perhaps the person did not change. Perhaps the image could no longer survive reality. This is why some relationships begin with incredible intensity and then end without a clear explanation. The connection was carrying more meaning than the relationship itself could support. Understanding projection does not mean dismissing every criticism. Other people may see something real about you. They may pull away for good reasons. You may simply not be right for each other. Projection should never become a theory you use to protect yourself from all uncomfortable feedback. Its purpose is to create a second question. Not only, what is this person placed onto me, but also, what role have I accepted, because it keeps them from seeing the more ordinary parts of me. Maybe being admired for your independence stops anyone from seeing how much reassurance you need. Maybe being known as highly perceptive protects you from asking whether someone truly cares. Maybe being mysterious feels safer than becoming the ordinary person who can be rejected. And once people begin seeing you in a certain way, that role can become hard to give up. Not because your depth is fake, not because your strengths are fake, but because real strengths can also protect us. A person may genuinely notice what other people miss. They may bring unusual attention into a conversation. They may be comfortable talking about grief, fear, identity, and the hidden reasons behind human behavior. But none of this automatically means they are emotionally open. There is a difference between talking about vulnerability and becoming vulnerable. You can speak about abandonment without ever saying, "I was afraid you would leave me." You can explain why people pull away without asking, "Did something happen between us?" You can talk about intimacy for hours while avoiding the simple acts that build it, asking for reassurance, admitting that you are confused, saying that something hurt, telling someone that you care, allowing another person to misunderstand you without immediately explaining what is wrong with them. These moments may feel smaller than deep psychological insight. They do not create the same atmosphere. They do not make you seem mysterious or powerful. They make you ordinary. A person who wants, needs, hopes, and can be disappointed. And that ordinary person may be exactly who you have been protecting. If you are known as independent, you do not have to show dependence. If you are known as perceptive, you can analyze someone instead of asking a question whose answer might hurt. If you are known as mysterious, distance can seem like part of your personality rather than something you fear. If people have called you too much, that phrase may be painful, but it can also become useful. It can explain every ending before you have to look closely at what happened. They left because I was too intense. They pulled away because I saw too much. They could not handle the truth. Sometimes those explanations may be correct. But when the same explanation follows you through many different relationships, it deserves a harder question. What does being difficult to reach protect you from? Maybe it protects you from asking directly for closeness. Maybe it protects you from discovering that someone enjoys your company but does not want the relationship you imagined. Maybe it protects you from being known without the qualities that make you impressive. Maybe it protects you from the ordinary risk of showing your real self and still not being chosen. You cannot solve that risk by becoming more memorable. In fact, being memorable may make it easier to avoid. A powerful first impression can bring people close very quickly. They may tell you secrets, they may admire your mind, they may say the connection feels unlike anything they have experienced before. That intensity can feel like intimacy. But intimacy requires something intensity cannot promise: continuity. The ability to stay when the conversation becomes ordinary. The patience to move through silence, repetition, and misunderstanding. The willingness to discover that neither person is a symbol. They are simply human. This is where some memorable people struggle. The beginning feels alive. There is mystery. There is possibility. The other person is still fascinated. Nothing has become normal enough to test whether the connection can survive without drama or emotional excitement. But every relationship eventually leaves the first room. The conversation cannot always remain deep. The other person becomes familiar. Their limitations appear. Your own limitations appear. You cannot keep creating the same first impression forever. And then the question changes. Can you remain when you are no longer impressing them? Can you allow someone to know you when you have nothing special to display? Can a relationship still feel meaningful when it does not always feel extraordinary? This is where some people begin pulling away before the other person has the chance to leave. They become harder to contact. They wait to see whether the other person will chase them. They create emotional tests without explaining the rules. They become quiet and hope the other person will somehow understand what they need. Then, when the relationship weakens, the old belief returns. No one can reach me. But sometimes people cannot reach what has never been placed within reach. This does not mean you created your loneliness on purpose. The protection may have started many years ago. Maybe being impressive once felt safer than needing someone. Maybe understanding other people helped you prepare for disappointment. Maybe mystery protected parts of you that had previously been ignored, mocked, or hurt. A defense can be intelligent. It can even be beautiful. But something that once protected you can later keep everyone outside. The problem is not your depth. The problem begins when your depth becomes like a beautiful building with no visible door. And this is where shadow work becomes personal. The shadow is not only anger, jealousy, fear, or desire. It may also contain the ordinary person you have learned to hide, the part that does not know, the part that needs comfort, the part that cannot explain everything, the part that wants to be loved without first becoming unforgettable. Accepting this part does not make you smaller. It means you stop using what is powerful in you to hide what is tender. Integration begins when qualities you once kept apart are allowed to exist in the same person. Strength and need, understanding and uncertainty, intensity and tenderness, the part that knows, and the part that still has to ask. Imagine a painter who has spent years treating black paint as a mistake. They avoid it, they hide it, they use only brighter colors. The painting may still look beautiful, but it lacks depth because it has no real contrast. Then, one day, the painter places black on the palette deliberately, not because darkness has become good, because it has become useful. The same can happen inside a person. A hidden need does not disappear. It comes out indirectly. It becomes silence, distance, resentment, testing, pulling away while secretly hoping someone will follow. But once the need is recognized, it can become a direct sentence. I wanted you to stay. I felt ignored. I do not know what you meant. I need reassurance. I'm afraid this matters more to me than it does to you. These sentences may sound smaller than the language of psychology. They do not explain the mind, they reveal the person. And that is why they create a different kind of closeness. You are no longer asking someone to understand the atmosphere around you. You are giving them something clear they can respond to. This does not guarantee the answer you want. They may misunderstand. They may not be able to give you what you need. They may decide they do not want the relationship to continue. Being honest does not protect you from rejection. It simply removes the protection that keeps you from ever receiving a clear answer. That clarity can hurt, but it can also end the endless confusion created by silence, hints, and hidden tests. Integration means becoming able to handle what a real encounter may reveal. Maybe you are not always the person who understands everything. Maybe another person sees something in you that you do not want to accept. Maybe what you call their fear of intimacy is partly their tiredness from being analyzed. Maybe what you call independence sometimes feels like emotional absence to them. Maybe your intensity does not always create depth. Sometimes it creates pressure. This does not mean every criticism is true. It means you become curious before protecting the identity you know best. What if they have noticed something real? What if part of the loneliness comes not from your depth, but from what you have built around it? That question is not an attack. It is an opening. Once you see a defense clearly, it no longer has to control every relationship automatically. You can notice when you are trying to create an impression instead of making contact. You can notice when you are analyzing instead of asking. You can notice when you pull away to see whether someone will chase you. You can notice when the thought, "they could not handle me," arrives before you have considered another explanation. And then you can choose something simpler. The next movement begins in the moment when you feel yourself becoming difficult to reach. A message upsets you. A conversation changes. Someone seems less interested than before. Your usual explanation begins forming. They are intimidated. They are avoiding depth. They do not understand me. Pause before finishing the story. Ask one direct question. Did something change between us? Did I misunderstand what you meant? Have I made it difficult for you to know what I need? Then allow the answer to be ordinary. Do not immediately turn it into evidence about their psychology or your depth. Maybe they felt pressured. Maybe they needed space. Maybe they misunderstood you. Maybe they simply want something different. Or maybe your first interpretation was partly right. The purpose of asking is not to blame yourself. It is to replace guessing with information. Notice another moment, the moment when you want someone to understand a need you have never expressed. You become quieter, you pull away, you wait to see whether they will come after you. You tell yourself, if they truly understood me, they would know what to do. In that moment, try one clear sentence. I want you closer. I need clarity. I have felt distance between us. I am not asking you to fix everything. I just do not want to hide this. These words will not save every relationship. That is not their purpose. Their purpose is to make a real relationship possible. Being reachable means letting another person respond to what is truly there. They should not have to fight through mystery, silence, or emotional tests before they can find you. Start with one relationship, not the most broken one. Not the person you have spent years trying to convince. Choose someone who matters to you and who has shown that they can be honest. Notice one place where you normally try to create an impression instead of making contact. Then do the less impressive thing. Ask, clarify, admit, remain. This is how the shadow becomes integrated inside a relationship, not through discovering how rare you are, but through noticing that part of you may prefer being admired from a distance to being met without protection. That part does not need to be hated. It may have protected you when needing someone felt unsafe, but protection becomes isolation when no one is allowed to find the door. And this may be what your loneliness has been trying to show you. Being memorable is not the same as being known. A person can leave a powerful impression and still remain impossible to reach. They can offer intelligence, intensity, and emotional depth while hiding the smaller truths through which intimacy actually grows. Need, uncertainty, dependence, embarrassment, limitation, the fear of becoming ordinary in someone else's eyes. This does not mean you need to become less deep. It means your depth must become a place another person can enter. Shadow integration is not discovering that you are secretly more special than everyone around you. It is recognizing the parts of yourself that benefit from remaining difficult to reach, the part that would rather be admired from a distance than met without protection, the part that would rather explain rejection than ask a vulnerable question, the part that would rather remain unforgettable than risk becoming ordinary and known. Other people may still misunderstand you. Some may still pull away. Honesty does not guarantee belonging, but it changes the loneliness you create around yourself. You no longer need intensity to protect you from tenderness. You no longer need mystery to protect you from being ordinary. You no longer need every ending to prove that you were too deep for the room. The task is not to become less memorable, it is to become more reachable. Because intimacy is not created by how strongly people feel your presence when you enter a room. It begins when someone can remain beside you after the first impression has faded, and finally meet the person who is still there.